All right, welcome back to the Moment Makers podcast. This is Ben. Today, Brennan is sitting out, and I've got Jacob Goodale here with me, one of my favorite conversationalists. We are great friends. We can just vibe off of each other, and I'm excited to have him here. Jacob, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah, all right. We're talking about water buffalo.
And the shortage thereof.
Yeah, there's a shortage of water buffalo, surprisingly. That's what you were saying anyway, which kind of, I'm not too angry about it because, they have out of pretty much all of the animals in the animal kingdom, they have one of the highest kill rates.
Particularly in Montana.
Water buffalo in Montana?
Mm-hmm.
There's water buffalo in Montana?
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were primarily African-based.
No, there's some in Montana, too.
There's water buffalo in Montana.
And New York.
And New York?
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about the same water buffalo here?
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Or do you just mean buffalo? Buffalo, New York? That's a place.
I actually know nothing about water buffalo.
Well, then why'd you bring it up, Jacob?
I was not on the air when I brought this up.
Well, you know what? I thought it was good material, and I guess I was wrong. Anyway, now, what brings you here? The interest, the intrigue of what you can say on air, what's going to be out there, what's going to be fascinating for the ears to hear, for the viewers, for the people that are at home who cannot see.
I'm pretty sure you brought me here.
I did bring you here. I needed you here because I couldn't do another one by myself. I couldn't do another podcast by myself, even though I was just working on one earlier, and it was a lot of fun, but it's kind of outlandish. It's kind of an outlandish sort of thing. So sometimes you need to be able to have someone who you can bounce conversation off of.
It's your solo podcast, however, is very psychologically interesting because it's like listening to someone alone on a desert island.
That's kind of the vibe that I'm going for with the solo
authentic.
Podcast. Yeah.
It's authentic.
I'm trying to just dive into, really kind of have the mentality of if I were actually alone, what conversations would I have with myself?
Mm-hmm. And I would say it matches very well because I've heard you talk to yourself. So
it kind of goes into some insane
when you're in the
territory.
kitchen at the end.
Yeah, I had my boss, Aaron, your boss as well. For those who don't know, Aaron, Jacob also works at the same establishment as I do. But
Aaron's carpet cleaning service, for those who are curious.
Yeah, Jacob cleans carpets.
So does Ben.
I clean carpets.
I wash them. He usually scrubs them.
Well, I prefer to do the dirty work. I hang the carpets out to dry. But I had Aaron come in one day, and I was singing to myself about some random bullshit. It's
oh yeah, you told me about this.
Something, you don't take my wife out to Georgia line and ask her to keep her own milk on the dietary factions. And he came in and he was like, who are you talking to? I'm like, I'm talking to anybody.
The fact that he actually asked who you were talking to.
He's like, is Hall still here?
It's awesome.
Yeah, I talk to Hall like that. No.
For those at home who cannot see, Hall would not be the best person to talk to in such a comical tone. He's not a very comical man.
I feel like Hall is a whole podcast in itself. Actually, Hall or Passageway. Halls, passageways, rooms. Were we just talking about architectural factions here now?
Well, hall and passageway can have very different connotations, considering a hall is could be a giant meeting place, like Carnegie Hall.
That's true.
Such. Or
That's
passageway
very true.
is just you're going from. It's passageway. You're going from one place to another.
Fascinating little excerpt here. We do in Lewisburg, West Virginia, have one of the only 3 Carnegie Halls in the world.
I believe it's 4.
4? Is it 4? Where's the... Okay, New York, and isn't there one in England or something? Where's the other one?
I don't know. I know there's one in New York.
Yeah.
I don't know where the other 2 or 1 are, but we're one of the only ones in the world.
Yeah.
That's true. Come check us out.
Yeah, sure. Come on down here to Lewisburg, West Virginia, and be a good old tourist, and come and eat at Stardust Cafe and have yourself a drink at the General Lewis Thistle Lounge. We'll serve you up generally and rightfully so. Come on.
As we said before, me and Ben are both the carpet cleaners there, so...
Yeah, we clean carpets at General Lewis Inn. Basically, it's so slow on,
part-time
weekday nights. Anyway, I'd like to bring it back to a conversation that we were having last night, actually, when we were hanging out with each other. We were talking a little bit about just sort of how to take the people within our lives. You know, me, you, your wife, Zoe, and your friend Scotty, all these different people, and you're kind of putting them in different boxes of just sort of what kind of person they are. Like, obviously, you've got introversion, extroversion, all those, you know, simpler things, you know, that everybody sort of identifies with right off. But you can go way more in depth with intuition and thinking and feeling, introverted intuition, extroverted intuition, and how all these things play a role in your life. But even more interesting than that is how you come to that point in your life. And we were having sort of the conversation of, we realize both you and I, and your wife Zoe for that matter, we all sort of grew up where we had the ability to go outside, wander, be by ourselves, be alone. We had the ability to be alone, be independent, not needing other people to provide us with entertainment, but we had ourselves for our own entertainment. Mm-hmm. And how that can sort of bring about, I don't know if that in itself brings about introversion, but it definitely brings out sort of an independent social life, almost, you could say, an independent mentality of you don't have to have other people around in order to feel accomplished or like you're worth something, in a sense. You don't need to feel entertained by other people. You're not entirely like
your
you can
life
be a person.
Narrative is not solely based off of extroverted events and, you know, hanging out with people and what you did with different people this week or even conversations you had. It's more, I'm definitely at that time in our childhood, it's more of the subjective factor of what's going on in your head. And particularly as a child, it's a strong imagination. I think all three of us had strong imaginations and would kind of just wander the woods and go off on our little fantasies. And every child has that to some extent, but I think our social seclusion allowed us to kind of mull in that for longer than most people.
I feel like almost if you have more friends at that age, you could say, quote unquote, friends, you have a group and you have sort of the leader of that group. And that's the person who sort of like brings you to these places and brings you like, this is what we're doing, and you follow, and that's fine in its own way. But in our case, it was less so about following anyone else, more so. It's more about following what you want in your own intuition and figuring out what it is that you actually want. Because, I mean, I feel like at that early age, you definitely feel more inclined to, oh, well, they want this, so that must be the thing that I want too, because you haven't realized what you want, so you try to get direction from other people.
Yeah, I think that's a slight problem with kids interacting with each other at an early age. I mean, although it's essential that kids have some social interaction, and I think we all had at least a healthy amount where we stayed sane somewhat.
I didn't.
Your solo podcast might say differently.
I didn't have very much social interaction for many, many, many years. I didn't really have friends until I was like actual my own friends until like the age of 14. So that, I feel like, definitely played a role on my social life and social skills, because I was extremely awkward and socially anxious for many years, even after the age of 14. And still to this day, I'm to a certain extent getting over it. But I definitely had a sort of independence come from not being around people. But there is that, like I said, the social anxiety that comes with being around people now, because I am so comfortable with myself. I'm more comfortable with myself than I am most other people. So of course I'm going to naturally be more introverted, because I prefer to spend time with myself, because, you know, I like myself. I like to entertain myself. I could live by myself and be fine. And I know you're in an extremely similar way. You can be by yourself and you're perfectly happy with that. You can be content with that.
And even need some time by ourselves. I think we both need time, and definitely Zoe as well. We all need time to ourselves to kind of recharge. when
Oh,
we've
yeah.
been out for too long, and I think to us that's such an essential part of our lives, but other people don't. You can't even really understand that. They see it as kind of the opposite. It's like, man, I need to recharge by going out
Yeah,
and
it's
seeing
like
some people, so
need to
I don't go
reintroduce.
crazy.
I need to reintroduce my social life. I haven't been going out and doing things. They feel like they're not doing their part in society because they're not going out and doing things. Where we kind of feel the opposite, where we like need to be by ourselves for sure, instead of like there's the certain people that so-called quote unquote need to go out and be social with the people that they want to be people with, if that makes sense,
And I
to
think
be a
that
person.
was between you and me. I think that was one of the major things we connected on with our shared love for music. Is even though we naturally like drastically different music, although there's more and more stuff that we can both agree on. I think as we get older
Nowadays, for sure,
and our
yeah.
taste expands, we have very different temperaments of what we're drawn to in music, but a similar way of listening, I would say, where we both, I think our ideal experience was being alone and kind of just immersing the song.
Yeah.
Like it was all, like a very cinematic experience. We both like longer songs, and we treat music as its own thing. It's not a background to something else. Although sometimes it can be that too. We
understand the place of what music can be, and that we personally enjoy a more storytelling aspect of music.
Well, I remember one of the first times that we hung out, you mentioned something of asking me if I'd ever listened to music like in a dark room and just felt, I forgot exactly how you described it, but it almost sounded like a mini religious experience, and I resonated with it a lot because that was exactly how I most connected with music. Is I would go in a dark room, put something over my eyes, so I would like almost like a blindfold, which kind of looks like the some of the John Hopkins psilocybin tests that they're doing these days, where they blindfold the patient, put headphones on them. I was doing that at 14, not on any substances.
Right.
And I would really just immerse in the music and experience it like you would a film, where it's a dark room and you're completely kind of absorbed in what's happening there, and naturally get a lot of imagery too, and particularly cinematic imagery.
Well, I think an interesting thing, we as people anymore, we listen to music a lot less, I guess you could say intuitively nowadays than we used to. Like we used to, you used to go buy a record and you used to put it on your record player and sit there, listen to the whole album. There was no streaming, there was none of that to where you could just listen to whatever you want at any time. Listening to music was an event. It was a thing that you did. You wanted to go. You wanted to buy this album. You wanted to bring it back and listen to it.
The record has a lot to do with that, because I think now there's almost, the album is in a sense dying because everything's a playlist now.
Yeah.
And playlists have their place, and like I really like curating a good playlist, but I think you always need to listen to an album and hear its complete arc, because a lot of times the album itself is a piece. Like even if like an album is not just all the songs included on it added together. It has a certain arc, and a good album does.
Well, what a good album should be is a proper playlist, in a sense,
Yeah,
it should
exactly.
be like this piece of music that tells a story from start to finish. Maybe not lyrically it has to be a story, but there is something you're trying to progress. You're trying to start with something and end with something. And how do you want to, like, you can start it at this point and you want to end at this point, and you have to figure out what is the best path in between to get there. And that's one of my favorite things to do, is to kind of figure out what is most pleasing to the ears. Like, okay, this song, then this song, then this song, because each song has its own thing. But it's like piecing a puzzle together. It's like trying to fit this song and figuring out what comes after it that feels natural, until like all of them are in there and feels like a natural flow.
It's getting like an emotional logic to its progression, where it feels like a natural. Because I think for a lot of artists, albums kind of distill a certain era of their life and a certain emotional state or thought pattern. The most common example of this is the breakup album. That always has, it's like every artist has usually at least one of those. Pop artist, I would say.
Like a relationship type of breakup that's
where
influenced by a breakup like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the like the arc of the album a lot of times kind of tells the story of the relationship with that
Yeah.
person, or at least, and not necessarily to an extroverted event. It's not like I met her in the grocery store on this one day, but it's an emotional progression of
Yeah.
how things, and I think it usually would start kind of at the first stage of breakup albums. Tend to start with the initial emotions and then go back through some memories in the middle and then kind of come to a conclusion where it's all wrapped up and there's some resolution.
Yeah.
I've noticed that being a kind of a common pattern of particularly that type of concept album, let's say. That's the most common
I'm
concept
trying to
album,
think
the breakup album.
I'm trying to think of albums that I've listened to like that. I can't quite. Of course.
I can't quite think of any examples either, but for those at home who can't see, I wanted to mention a more vanilla example of what we're talking about.
A vanilla example.
Because usually,
for
me, a concept album, it's a lot more conceptual.
Yeah. When I think of concept albums, I think of The Parallax by Between the Buried and Me, which that's about like this dude on Earth and this dude who's like a million light years away in space.
Yeah, exactly. That kind
and
of stuff.
he like their soul is connected and they like see each other in their dreams, and he like comes over here on a spaceship, and like there's these great evil owls that want to destroy the Earth, and they destroy the Earth that he's on. They come here, and then he's like, oh, he's being influenced by the owls, and he's like, oh, let's destroy this Earth, and it's a whole huge thing. That's what I think of when I think of concept albums, like this big, grand, expanded thing. But I mean, there's so many different examples of what a concept album can be.
Well, I think the thing that most influenced me to my love for concept albums and my seeing music as a story and as an album as a whole is Coheed and Cambria.
Yeah.
From an early age, my sister, that was her favorite band, and she would always she would try to collect the comic books and like kind of put the pieces together of the story. And I thought it was so fun, like seeing how each song was like a film. It was like an entry in the saga and had a whole sci-fi epic to it, and also a very good emotional logic too. Like I think the lead singer songwriter of that band, Claudio Sanchez, he kind of needed to. I remember I saw an interview with him once where he said that he couldn't just write a song about his emotions, like sit down and be like, this is what I'm feeling. And I relate to that a lot. He kind of has to put, excuse me, I ran out of breath there. He has to put it into a narrative to play it out in his mind. And I relate to that a lot, where if I just think, what am I feeling? That's such an ambiguous question and it's hard to grapple with. But if I try to make a story, I think that the character in a story, the protagonist, will usually embody who you are to some extent. And you can kind of naturally map out your emotions and your whole psyche through telling a story.
I think a big part of that is because you tend to write what you know. And what generally do most people know the most about? Usually, hopefully, themselves. Mm-hmm. And so that sort of instinctually, subconsciously comes out regardless of what you're trying to do. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you'll try and write a story about someone else who's totally unrelated to you, completely like trying to do something that you weren't a part of. But even then, I feel like
you project onto them.
Exactly.
And you'll usually pick a concept that you can identify with. It's like picking your myth, picking a lot of bands do like historical concepts, which I always thought was cool.
Yeah.
Like Over, where they did the album kind of, it wasn't quite a story concept, but just a theme of Rome, and particularly the fall of Rome. Like, I love that, because just that idea kind of put into your head while you're listening to the music evokes a lot of imagery.
Which is very interesting, because that entire album is very, like, 80s synth pop or whatever.
Yeah, it's not exactly, like, your first impression hearing it wouldn't be, ancient Rome. But when you hear it, or when you hear that it's about that to some extent, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I also kind of think back to, like, Vaporwave, and one of the original, the Macintosh one, the like classic Vaporwave song, and it has, I'm pretty sure it's like a Roman or Greek statue on it. I kind of think of that sort of mentality that's Roman and synth.
It definitely has a sense of like reflection on the past, but through a modern light. I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it yet why it works so well, but I do think that they had I think that band is just very in touch with kind of mythological motifs.
Oh yeah, for sure.
with their background in more like, I don't know what you call like Norse metal, black metal kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, originally they were like, I think they were technically called like ambient black metal, which is what it was, or yeah, ambient black metal, you could say. So
they're from Norway, right?
I think it's Norway. I really want to say it's Norway. It's either Norway or like Finland. One of the what are they called? Nordic countries? Or
yeah, Nordic or
Scandinavian. That's what it is.
One,
yeah, they're from those countries. But what were we even talking about? Concept albums.
Yeah.
I don't know. Even if you are writing like something that is a concept album and it's not entirely yourself, I feel like sometimes project what you want in yourself on the concept album.
Yeah, you will naturally, and that's kind of the point. I think you want it to. If you're a songwriter, you do want it in the end to say something about yourself, even if that's not the main.
Because I feel like if it doesn't, it's kind of ingenuine.
Yeah, you don't just want to make it unless you're. I mean, it's the difference between composing music for something else. If you're like soundtracking a film or a show that's someone else's work and you're trying to complement what's going on there versus just sheer, original creation, and you're expressing yourself in some way. Even if I've never seen with my music, self-expression is not exactly the main goal. I don't like, 'cause I don't feel.
What do you think is the main goal?
That's a good question. I mean, self-expression as a goal, I think, just has always made me scratch my head because I don't feel a need. Like, I think some people feel a need to. It's kind of like, well, I think this goes back to extroverted, introverted feeling of introverted feelers tend to feel things fully and naturally to themselves without having to have to talk to anybody about it, and other people have to talk to other people to kind of sort out their feelings. Yeah. And I'm actually I think I'm more extroverted feeling, because I lean towards introversion more on thinking. Anyway, we won't get into that now. Where was I? With the self-expression, though, I've never quite fully understood the term or can never fully apply it to myself. I didn't feel like I need to get this off my shoulders, or like I've never been like, man, I need to write a song about this current emotional state. It's much more of a it feels to me much more of a abstract creation. I think the goal of my art is always abstraction.
Well, see,
to some extent,
kind of in the same realm. Like, I've tried to write songs to express certain feelings that I know or feel like I should have.
Mm-hmm.
And if you force it like that, it never ends up with like the best product, I think. But the interesting thing is when you are fully enveloped by music, when you're fully in the creative mindset and you're not trying too hard to put something down, you're not trying to force yourself, you're just doing what you feel is natural. That is the truest form of self-expression, is to just be within
definitely.
it. And
it's just a matter of how you kind of. I would say that in the end, it actually is self-expression. That's what's happening. But some people kind of start with that more as an intention of how they get into their state. Everyone has different methods of getting into that natural state of creation. And some people, it's a way of coping with their feelings. For me, and I think you to some extent, we're both more like narrative people. We like to construct narratives of some sort, even if it's not a fully consistent, like, here's my character, his name this. Like, it doesn't have to be so grounded, but there's kind of a sense of a story. Yeah, a theme.
Yeah. That's... I mean, the outro to this podcast is, I feel like, a somewhat good example.
Yeah.
So it goes, which I wrote. Never said that on this podcast before, actually.
Yeah, one day when we were listening to an episode with Zoe and I, and that song came on, she was like, wait, I thought that was a real song at first.
A real song? Yeah. All of the music on Moment Makers Podcast is made by all of us.
It's real music, guys.
It's real music by us.
It's not fake.
I don't know. I'm going to go off on a tiny little bonus section here. The intro to the podcast is an instrumental song that I did, and there's a really stupid story about the name of the song. The name of the song is Cucumbers Are the Kings of Hell. The only reason why
I would say pickles are the kings of hell more than cucumbers, but okay, go on.
The only reason why it's called that is like while I was writing it, I had a party at my house and I got way too drunk. And I was just hanging out and we were playing Cards Against Humanity or something. And I was like, I don't even remember the night, but someone got a video of it where I was just like leaning back, rocking back and forth and just went, cucumbers are the kings of hell. And then I just took that and like, you know what? That's a great name for a song.
It's like, where in your subconscious did that come from?
Well, I was shit-faced.
Still, it came from somewhere in you.
I feel like it's a good name for the song though, because the song in itself is very just sort of all over the place, but that's kind of the point.
Well, that kind of brings me to another point of one of our mutual taste in music is we both really like instrumental music a lot more than most people, and I think that brings me back to where I see music a little bit less tied to my ego than some songwriters. Like I've never could fully identify with the term songwriter because I don't, even though I actually do like writing a lot, like writing words as well as music. I've always kind of felt a sense of music for music's sake. A lot of times I don't want to damper it down with words.
Well, you're also really, really good at, like, I imagine your style of writing as primarily sort of thematic in the sense of, like, you could easily, I feel like, write a movie score and do
I've always had a
those
tie
things.
to cinematic sounds, and
because you know how to play a music to a mood, and you don't need lyrics or vocals or anything to evoke that mood. There is a visual element to it when it comes to movies, but you're able to bring out so many different feelings or emotions or just different things like that with music. If you put a darker tone or darker melody over this section, it immediately becomes darker versus if you do a happier melody. So it's a very interesting way to be able to describe a scene without words.
Yeah, and instrumental music too. I think we both just tend to like it because it has more, or not like it. I don't want to say instrumental music as opposed to vocal music, but music which is not solely based on the vocals. It might still have verse and chorus and everything, but the instrumentals will go off. And it doesn't have to be like a jam band, 10-minute solo kind of thing. But there's just something where the mood evoked by non-lyric parts is essential to the arc of the song still. That makes sense.
Well, yeah.
I think Tool was a good example of that because they write their whole instrumental parts first, and then he writes the lyrics over it.
Yeah,
and I think that's a really interesting idea, because I think it's amazing how well Maynard James Keenan captures he can kind of take the zeitgeist of the music and then put words to it, and it feels like it was organically. Like that was the idea from the start. It doesn't quite feel like it's an afterthought.
Yeah.
And I think that shows how talented he is at the lyric writing. But I think it also shows how predominantly music-based they are. It's not, it's not like we have a certain thing we want to talk about or certain even personal thing we want to express. They're a really tight band that just kind of has a musical chemistry and can go off and just create a musical landscape, and then they go over back on it and refine it and kind of put lyrics to it and give it more of a refined meaning, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. I definitely I feel like Maynard listens to the music and tries to figure out what thing it invokes, whether it's a feeling or a sensation or whatever you want to call it. He tries and matches it the music to a certain extent and really make it one thing and try to really bring a roundness to it all, if that a completed sense to it to a certain extent, because you have the music and certain people can interpret the music in so many different ways. I feel like he's trying to show you his interpretation of it, kind of.
Yeah, and I think I think for me the music first and then the words is a better method, because you have to let the music, like, the music is what it's truly about. That's the true thing that's happening. It's the more abstract feeling state and everything.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to outline that first and see what is it that I'm actually feeling, and what is it that I'm actually writing about feeling wise. Just an intuitive landscape,
But also an
like a certain color palette, and then you can sharpen it into the words of a certain meaning that works with it. But I think if you write it's to each his own. Some people have a completely different method, but I think if you write the words first, sometimes you feel like you have to kind of bend the music to fit that meaning, and it can feel a little bit more forced, versus if you just have something that has its full soul through the music, and then the words are kind of a cherry on top that binds it all together.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think it does. An interesting thing, though, is how do you feel about opposites, like having a really dark song with really uplifting lyrics, or a really uplifting song musically with really dark lyrics? I love having that contrast.
Contrast. I mean, contrast is a key principle in music. I think of a lot of good music, there's some contrast.
Well, I definitely feel like some of the best music is contrasting emotions. It's, dark music, uplifting vocals, or dark vocals, uplifting melody. There's always, like, take Pumped Up Kicks as an example by Foster
that's
the People.
an example.
It's about fucking shooting up a school, basically. But it sounds like a dancey pop hit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You have contrast in so many different forms.
If it's done right, that can be really good. I think it's kind of artificially done a little bit too much, especially with pop songs, where it's like happy pop song but dark meaning. It's kind of it's been done a little bit too much. But I think this kind of returns to my like kind of image-based way of seeing music. I think if it fits with like when you're talking about the contrast of lyrics, like the technical meaning content and the mood, it really has to fit into I have to see it as a scene where it makes sense why there's like, because I do like scenes in movies especially where there's like some sort of maybe uplifting music, or just music that's more neutral, like a lot of times classical music or something, but then something kind of terrible is happening, and it kind of has this sense of the fates are just turning their,
like when a massacre or something is happening, but it's like really uplifting classical music.
Well, I think a good example of that is it can kind of express like also scenes in films where again there's something bad happening, like war or something, but you can see nature and it's still so beautiful. It's like the sunrise is still gorgeous and the mountains are still beautiful, but there's corpses all across the battlefield.
Right,
I think that
something
image
like that
has a lot of like depth and weight to it. So if that's expressed musically, it can be really good. I don't know how well Pumped Up Kicks does that.
Well, I mean, that's just an example of contrast
I did
in popular
think of that.
music.
Now with dark music and uplifting lyrics,
there's one.
What are some examples of that? Because I can't really think of anything.
There was one.
I mean, I know metal bands, they tend to have obviously a heavier, darker atmosphere, but maybe more uplifting. But I think usually it's like the uplifting lyrics. It's like something going through a battle. Like the music itself metal often has a sense of being in the battle, in the conflict.
Yeah. Well, okay, think about it like this. Like you said, metal, like a band August Burns Red, all their music sounds like super angry and just super in your face, but all their lyrics are about like getting over sadness and being happy and just like good mental health.
But
and
it's still,
things like
it makes
that.
sense with the conflict of it's like I'm dealing with these emotions and I'm victorious over them. But I feel like if you had something that's just truly dark, like if you had something that's actually like a very sinister mood and the lyrics were sheerly uplifting, it wouldn't quite make sense. Again, it's like it depends on what you mean. The terms are a little too vague to tell. But I know what you mean with August Burns Red, and I think it makes sense with them.
They're one of their quotes, like they have shirts that say "angry music for happy people."
Yeah,
it's a great sort of example. But you know what? This is a great time to get the listener to do something for us. You know what? If you can think of a song that is very dark with uplifting lyrics, you know what? Leave a comment, leave a review. You know what? Leave us a review. Yeah, just leave us a review. Leave us a review, please, for me and everyone else. Thanks. But anyway, back to contrast in music.
Well, one of the best things is, and I think this is one of the things that made Bach so good. So Bach's good. Aside from all his technical, everyone will tell you about his counterpoint and all that stuff, which is pretty amazing. But it's like, we get it. He was a genius. I agree. But I think the key thing that's made his music so timeless is all of his pieces go through like a cycle of moods, where they start with one kind of predominant theme that might be more towards the major or minor, happy or sad side, but they go through this full harmonic cycle that feels like almost like a cycle of life. So it has a very reflective tone to it and a good bounce of melancholy and uplifting. And I think especially when you think of like the Baroque cathedrals of, I don't remember what century he was alive, but some time in the 1600s or so, I think.
Bach?
Yeah.
I want to
Not Middle Ages, but like,
say it was like the 17th century.
I don't know.
You're probably right about the 16th.
But some
doesn't matter.
Time before the technological revolution, let's say that.
Yeah,
and you can kind of imagine like a cathedral in a forest, and I don't know, when I think of his music with that setting, again, with that image, it makes a lot more sense to me, because for a long time I was kind of confused by it, because I didn't care for it as much, and most classical music, because it didn't stay on one emotion. And with my music, I usually like to kind of boil in one mood and atmosphere and let it like take its shape.
Mm-hmm.
But he does it in a unique way where he can do that, but also, like I said, take it through a full cycle, and I think it's really impressive. It almost has a surreal feeling of like watching your life pass before your eyes, and you're seeing like memories that are good and bad in a similar mood,
He traverses all the emotions. I mean, you could like you said, he's going about like different scales and modes and different like things like that. But I mean, within each of those scales and different modes, you have different emotions that are being evoked by that.
Mm-hmm. And it makes natural sense. Like I think a lot of other classical composers, they would change keys and modes and such, or not modes as much, but they would change keys and moods a lot, but it was kind of a forced contrast of
it's like when there's a key change in a pop song or something, it's like,
exactly,
ooh, we're doing something different, so it's not the same thing over and over again. But
exactly. I think that
right?
was taken too much of like, this is a thing you got to do for the form to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
And I like how modern music has, especially modern classical music, has returned a little bit more to sulking in certain moods and representing that more clearly. But I do think that Bach still was the master of kind of expressing the cycle of life. And it makes sense that it was church music, but not church music like we think of it, but more a very different church atmosphere, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, church in the 16th century is very different than it is today.
I think it was a lot more melancholy too, because there was so many diseases at that time.
Bubonic plague.
Exactly. People died younger, and church was very much a place associated with death a lot more than it is today.
Yeah.
Even though it still kind of is, You can see a cathedral and you'll think of death a little bit.
To a certain extent, yeah. Death of the soul.
Death of the soul.
Not always.
Damn Catholics. Taking shots at Catholics.
Catholicism.
Not really.
That's a fun word, Catholicism. I like saying that word. Catholicism and facetious.
So a little on that topic, a little swing by our mutual Christian heritage.
Yeah.
Did your family consider Catholics to be Christians?
I don't think so.
'Cause my mom didn't, and I was talking to Zoe about that, who wasn't raised Christian, and she found that really funny because she always kind of saw it as the same. Like, well, of course, it's like they have crosses too. It's like they worship Jesus. I'm like, no, they're completely different religions.
It kind of is, yeah.
Yeah.
Catholicism and Christianity are very different.
I mean, I think they still fall under Christianity.
Yeah,
but no Protestant would say that.
Yeah.
Catholics are like, yeah, we're the same, bro. Martin Luther shaking his head.
I don't even think Catholics would say
Yeah,
it's under
probably not.
Christianity.
I don't know.
I feel like only people who are not associated with either religion would say they're
Yeah, they're like
in the same.
they both worship Jesus. Like, what the hell's the difference?
But I mean, Catholicism like worships like the Virgin Mary and stuff like that, and like you can't have like you can't use condoms, you can't like.
And there's the authority of the Pope and that kind of stuff,
which is like why that whole thing in itself, having the Pope being pretty much the end all be all power instead of God.
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
not good.
It's well,
I respect Catholic. I mean, the Catholics definitely have an advantage when it comes to their imagery and their art and such. You know, with the beautiful cathedrals, and I think they focused a lot more on some symbolic aspects of Christianity that they really nailed down, which can be seen through their art traditions. But I'm sorry, I paused there. There's dogs barking outside for those who can't see.
I thought it was my dog barking for a second. I was like, is she okay?
But they also have, I don't just want to make this a criticism of Catholicism, but historically, you know, I do think the church and state lack of separation and the authority of the Pope is bad news.
Oh yeah, I mean the separation of church and state.
The separation of
church and
state is a foundational part of our Constitution.
Well, it's
essential.
Yeah. You can think of it from two different ways, because I mean, if you oh boy, separation from church and state. So therefore, like, God shouldn't really be part of our constitutional values. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if there is separation of church and state, that shouldn't be a thing. If there isn't separation between church and state, if this is going to be a, you know, God sovereign country based upon God, then wouldn't the church have to pay taxes at that point?
Yeah.
So that's like two different points of view where you can end up winning for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay that churches don't pay taxes as long as it's every religion, as long as it's every religious organization doesn't have to pay taxes. If it favors one religion over another, that's the problem.
But I mean, an interesting thing there, you can go online and easily start a quote-unquote
that is
church.
the problem with it. But
like, I could literally go online and start a church of rock and roll, and we could become tax exempt.
Why don't we do that, man?
I've thought
the Moment Makers Church.
No,
the Moment Makers Church community.
I had that idea when the GBC Jam was going to be a thing, because like religious activities are exempt from any sort of corona laws.
Music is a religious activity, man.
Yeah. So if we would like come up with our own church, then we could essentially do whatever we want, and then you could be tax exempt, all these different things. Not saying we are going to do that, but isn't that so crazy how easy it is to become a quote unquote religious organization of your own description?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
yeah. And there is an unfair advantage of religious organizations over other ones that are not. Okay, that's a bad scene. Well, I saw an example of this with legal. Let's get into a whole nother topic, but with legal usage of psychedelics, you know, peyote is allowed to be used if you're a member of the Native American church, because that's been a part of their tradition. Yeah. And I do think that's a good thing. I'm glad that they're allowed to do that. But it is a little silly that's like, if you want to use peyote and explore that as your own personal experience, but you don't necessarily believe in God or like see it as a religious thing, you just see it more as a personal growth or whatever, you're not legally allowed to. And I don't think that's fair. I think that's kind of an unfair advantage of like, well, if you believe in some higher power, it's okay, but if not, you're still like, there's still kind of a leaning towards
that. Kind of brings it back to, why is it illegal in the first place? Why are they saying we shouldn't have it in the first place if certain people are allowed to have it?
Exactly.
You know,
I mean, with all these issues with taxes and stuff too, I go back to the more libertarian stance of
taxation is theft.
Well,
to a certain extent, I'm not a huge.
I think the thing is with taxation is we should be able to agree of whether we want to do it or not. And I say, like, you sign a paper this is how I feel with all kind of things. Like, same if you want to make a little socialist utopia thing, fine and good, but you have a contract you sign. Like, if I want to be part of this and reap the benefits of it, I have to do this thing. So it's like, okay, if I want to use the highways, I have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And if I don't want to pay taxes, and I don't need to, if I'm one of those sovereign citizens in the foothills of Montana, and I don't need to use the highways, and I'm just gonna fish and hunt on my own farm, I should be allowed to do that. It's like,
but I guess it's one thing. Like, how do you regulate that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a rough.
It's kind of
thing to
hopeless
get around
now
that.
with how big our country is. With millions of people tied to the same net. But
Like,
if we're talking about ideals of, like, if I were to write a new constitution, I would say that taxation should be, it's like, if you want to
voluntarily,
if you want to play, and then most people would still choose to, because you'd basically have to be isolated from society not to, like, you couldn't use the highways, you couldn't use any government service you did for free, but it still should be a choice, especially because now it's like our taxes pay for highways and such, but God knows what else they pay for that. And there was even, I think, a problem with back to the Catholic Church. There was a controversy a couple of years ago because of a law where taxes paid for birth control, and some Catholics didn't believe in birth control. So there was kind of a rub there of having to legally pay for something that you don't ideologically agree with. I think that's an interesting issue to reflect on. I'm not quite sure how I feel on that one, because I do think that I don't know if I want to get into that, actually. Do you have any comments on that?
I don't know about necessarily that. What's an interesting thing, I believe a new legislation / law thing just passed in Scotland. I think it was the first country to do so, but they're the first country to give away free feminine products and things like that, which go Scotland,
Yeah, exactly.
If they are, I'm not sure if they're the first one. I think so.
I think, but back to the taxation issue, I think maybe there should be categories of taxes where it's not just a general taxes, and who knows what the hell we're going to use this money for. Because, I do think that those nuns, I don't necessarily agree with their beliefs, but I do think if they don't believe in something, they shouldn't have to give their money for it. I still do believe in individual liberty there. So there should be a category of, like, okay, here's you still pay your taxes for the highways and you use those, but if you don't want to pay this tax, but again, and you don't get to use it, if one of those nuns suddenly gets pregnant and can't get birth control, that's her loss, but she chose to.
I feel like a great example is Social Security, because we all pay into it. We all pay into Social Security.
Hate Social Security.
Yeah, because because it's getting spent and none of us are getting it, and the thing is, you're gonna die before you see it.
And just the idea of, like, oh, Papa Uncle Sam here,
Uncle Sam,
Uncle Papa Sam is gonna make sure you're good and responsible and take away from your paycheck. Like, you better save this for life. Oh, but if you die young, like, or
then we're just gonna get it.
Yeah, we're just gonna take it. Because.
And there's so many people, like, they're taking away certain Social Security benefits from so many different people, and that's a whole other issue. Like, they're just they're just taking more of our money. Which, taxation, one thing, but Social Security, it's a whole fucking bullshit system, man.
It really is. FDR is the devil. Fuck you, FDR.
Well, the funny thing is, with each president, they're all
the devil.
Well. To a certain extent, any politician.
After the first 15 or so.
Any fucking politician's the goddamn devil, practically. But,
Washington was pretty good.
His teeth were made of...
His teeth weren't very nice.
No, his teeth were, like, how they said he had wooden teeth and stuff? He actually had teeth from slaves. Like, that's how his dentures were made and shit. Yeah. Like, none of them were fucking good. Like, even Abraham Lincoln, his main motivation to, like, have, like, the Civil War, all of that, it wasn't just to free slaves. It was a whole economic thing as well. Like, he wasn't solely doing it for that. That was just, partially. So, Abraham Lincoln, one of the absolute best presidents we ever had, for sure, given, like, all that he did. But... just as each and every other fucking president, there's pros and there's cons, there's good and there's bad. A lot of the times, There's so much bad. And like, look at the point that we've gotten to now. There's so much government. There's so much corruption. You know, there's so many. Like, look at Mitch McConnell.
Mhm.
Like, he passed a legislation to where he made sure, no matter what, super PACs could give as much money they want to any politician they want. He made sure that because it was like there was going to be laws made into effect. I think it was like I want to say it was like 2008 or something that this all happened. But like he made sure that politicians could get as much money as possible, and there was no regulation as to how much money you could get from any organization or person. There's just small things like that add up over time. Each different person add this slight bit of corruption, just a little more and more, to where you just get a politician group of corruption.
The kind of the problem with democracy, and I'm not gonna argue for any other system because it's kind of the same. It's the same thing with capitalism, where it's like democracy and capitalism are evil, but they're better than any other one we've tried.
So far, I guess.
So far. But the problem with democracy is like when you actually think about it, it's literally a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And you think about the leader of your country being the most popular kid in school, you know, that's like, ooh.
But how else?
No, I agree. I mean, because you run into a whole different problem with monarchy and such.
Yeah.
And we've had thousands of years with that, I think.
And it's just like this one dude's going to totally decide everything, and then you're just like, well, let's hope he gets it right.
Yeah.
And then, but I mean, I don't know. It's what is a system that would actually work?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what is a system? What does that word even mean?
No, I definitely think, like I said, I think that's a quote from Winston Churchill. I think he said about capitalism particularly that like it's the worst system except every other one. And same with democracy.
So many different systems are great on paper, but once you put human nature into them, they all go to shit.
Exactly. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
And the problem with big systems is the more you expand government, the more corruption is naturally going to happen, and the more there's going to be a separation where they're, you know, it's like God knows what they're doing up there, and how, like, what are we even going to do to find out, or, you know, like it's in the whole. That's why it's like keep the government smaller and it's just more manageable. I think that's the most important idea, I think, behind America, more than any other specific thing of democracy and such, is the idea of like, well, basic human rights, you know, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and trying to keep government as out of the individual affairs as possible, and not let it grow so that it smothers itself.
Well, that was kind of the point of America in the beginning in general, was like less, like we didn't want to be controlled by England. That was the whole point. And now it's kind of gone off into we're just controlled by a different thing now.
Yeah,
you know?
it's not.
It was founded by, quote unquote, we the people, and now it was supposed to be that forever. It was supposed to be ran by the people, and now it's just what's happening. I feel like the people we put in power are running us. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah. I think this is a great spot to do a little advert to let you all know.
Well, advert.
Yeah. I'm going to let you all know what you can do to save a little bit of money on Spero Cloth. You know, a little bit of something. You can go to SperoCloth.com. That is SperoCloth.com, and use code MMP to get 10% off of any purchase. And I'll tell you what, we have a giveaway going on right now.
Giveaway going away. Sorry, Ben. Sorry, I pointed out your flaws.
No. Please do.
He's looking at me right now as he says,
Please do.
Please do, Jacob.
Please do, Jacob.
Please do.
But we do actually have a really cool giveaway going right now. We just had our January collection drop. It's a lot of cool hoodies and shirts and designs that we have. We've got a giveaway going on, a giveaway going on Instagram. So if you can go follow us at Spero_Cloth on Instagram, you have a chance to win. I think it's 2 shirts, 2 hoodies, and a long sleeve shirt. I might have those numbers kind of backed around. But go follow us there, share, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and you get, like, with each share, with each comment, you get an entry into winning these 5 articles of clothing, is what it is. As well as any purchase, each dollar goes towards being counted in the giveaway. It's an entry in the giveaway. So, 1, go online to SperoCloth.com. Use code MMP to save 10% off of stuff. And 2, check out our Instagram account, Spero Cloth, and we've got a great giveaway going on right now that we want to share with you. All right, well, back to it. So, Jacob, we've been on, you and me have been on a little bit of a chest kick, a little chest kick.
Yes, we enjoy having a good game of chess.
Yeah, it's nice. I don't know why, but I'm terrible at the 24-hour games. Great at the 10-minute games.
And I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm much better with time.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel
I
like
suck at 10-minute ones.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's more pressure in a 10-minute one.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I can see how you can learn from it more.
Yeah.
You can see it forces you to adapt.
I feel like I'll lose like my strategy if it's over 24 hours and it's like 8 hours later after my last.
See, I feel like
move.
I'm better like adapting to each move. I'm watching. I'm like, okay, we're kind of having a vague plan. I'm not very good at planning the final attack. I don't know how to. I've got a good defense going. Got symmetry.
See,
Ryan taught me that. Ryan was like, our friend Ryan is a chess maestro,
which we really want to have him on the podcast here soon.
Yeah,
but
that would be good.
Yeah, I think it would be very good. I think that kind of gets down to life in a bit of a certain way.
Chess is always life. That's
because
that's a common analogy.
I feel like I'm a little bit better at in the moment decisions than I am at the long term ones sometimes.
Same. I'm better like adapting each moment.
Well, that's kind of the opposite
like right now.
in your chess
right now,
playing.
I'm just responding. I don't know what's happening. You're talking. I'm responding.
Exactly.
Moment
It's
by
just
moment,
the natural
flowing it out,
subconscious intuition as to what is going on. You're basing it off of
but
what I
thinking
just
of the
did.
future and planning ahead. What? I can't do that.
Yeah, that's absurd to be able to do something like that. To look ahead
Future's
into the future.
unpredictable. I don't
You
know
have
what's
no
gonna
idea
happen.
what's going to happen. But at the same time, you need to learn how it is. How you need to be able to accurately predict the future to a certain extent,
By
just
looking
like
at the past.
Yeah, and looking at just like chess, you need to be able to understand where things could possibly go and how to react. If this happens, then I do this. But if this happens, then I do this. You have those sort of generalized plans. Of course, nothing should be set in stone. You shouldn't just be like, well, you never know. You never know what's going to happen.
Just use your imagination.
Yeah.
I found the other day that, back to music creation a little bit, whenever I'd been imagining music kind of as trying to imagine something that I want to convey beforehand. But I thought of it the other day in a way of actually thinking of a time I would be playing it live. What would be the ultimate goal of when I would present this. And I can imagine, I can hear the songs a lot more clearly if I put it in a live setting. I put myself in a hall, or an orchestral hall, and then a band, and I know what's there, and I feeling it's imagining it as an event in my future rather than just as an abstract song or piece. Or art. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so to a certain extent.
I've been surprised at how much that's helped.
Well, I mean, you see, once you get an abstract concept of things, you can really go to different places with it. You can understand the possibilities of where things could go once you get a certain mentality about what it is, the music itself. I don't know. Yeah. I think we've been going almost an hour.
Really?
Yeah.
Already?
We have. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Wow.
Where else are we going to go with this right now?
I don't know.
Yeah, me either.
I think this is a fitting conclusion.
I think it is too. It's an ambiguous conclusion, which is pretty fucking fitting.
Yeah, we both love ambiguous conclusions.
Yeah.
Water buffaloes.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back.
But, it's always good to start on or end on the thing you started
always
with.
Good. It's a good trick.
Water
Podcast
buffalo.
101.
They're a dangerous animal. They kill a lot of human beings every year.
Could we fade out the song to the VeggieTales, or fade out the podcast to the VeggieTales song?
No, that's a copyright issue. That's a copyright issue.
Okay.
We can't do that. We're gonna do it to the same damn song we do
could
every
cover
time.
it. Ska.
Yeah, a
Ska
ska cover of the VeggieTales Water Buffalo
Yes.
song. Well,
Ska jazz.
yeah. Well, you're
New wave.
hearing it. We're gonna put it in post. It's coming in right now. Ha! Gotcha. It's a different song. It's the same song. I'll have a good one. Bye.